Mona, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure.
We're really excited to have you coming in March to the NIU Center. And I know that the IAMFT community is excited also to hear just everything that you're doing with neuroscience and couples and the recent book that you put out. I was wondering, before we get into more of those topics that you'll be talking about at the conference, could you maybe share a little bit about just kind of your journey up until now and how you got here?
Sure. Well, I would say that I fell in love with couple therapy, and I fell in love with my husband around the same time. I fell in love with him a little earlier in 1968, married in 1969. We're still together.
Nice.
And so I have a little bit of a glimpse of what it means to fall in love and what long-term love is all about, which I'll talk about in a little while.
Okay.
And I went to graduate school in clinical psychology and got my PhD. I entered in 1971 when the family therapy field was very young. So I grew up with the field.
Great.
Just like I grew up with my husband.
Yeah.
And then over the years, I've been practicing couple therapy for now decades. And then in 2004, I fell in love with neuroscience. This was my latest passion. So long-term love is couple therapy, newest passion is neuroscience.
Yeah.
And the way that happened was I went to a training with Alan Shore, who is one of the people who is bringing the what I call news from neuroscience to the rest of us therapists. And I went to a training with him for a week and was just blown away by the exciting intensity and richness of what he had to offer.
Yeah.
I was a neuroscience newbie. I knew nothing and raised my hand every chance I got.
All right.
But it opened a door for me to try to learn this whole new field. I then trained intensively with Daniel Siegel at UCLA, who's become my mentor. And then I began writing articles integrating neuroscience with systemic approaches to therapy, especially couple therapy.
Okay.
And published in professional journals and presented a lot.
Yeah.
And then the editor of professional books at Norton asked me to write a book for them on this topic, which became the book that just was published in September. My book is Loving with the Brain and Mind, Neurobiology and Couple Therapy.
That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's like giving birth.
Yeah.
It's my first book and very exciting.
How long did it take you to finish?
4 years.
4 years. Wow.
Yes.
That's impressive.
And the reason it took 4 years is I started out reading people like Daniel Siegel and Alan Shore and others who have integrated neurobiology for the clinician and for regular lay people. And then I decided to write the book. I really needed to learn the neuroscience itself. So I started Googling. I remember I was curious about empathy, so I Googled the neurobiology of empathy, and that started a very large journey.
Yeah.
So in multiple different fields, emotion regulation, the change process, empathy, gender differences, culture, I've researched the various fields to try to understand what these fields can teach us, clinicians, about change and about having better relationships and helping couples have better relationships.
Wow.
So that's been my journey.
Yeah, that's great.
It was a 4-year journey, and I'm still on the journey, by the way. I'm still learning new things.
Oh, you're not
I'm trying to keep current. I'm addicted. I love it.
Well, that always helps.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the things that you're going to be talking about at the conference that maybe we can give the audience a little tease of that?
Great. I will do that. So first I want to say that I will be presenting a lot of material, but I try to present it in a fun way. So it's accessible. My goal is for no one to fall asleep and for no one's eyes to glaze over because it's about the brain.
We appreciate that.
I'm trying to bring it in a friendly way, a user-friendly way.
Yeah.
And there will be a lot of discussion and some exercises I'll be doing with the group, with the audience as well. So it should be interactive and lively throughout the day, which I'm looking forward to.
Great.
And what I want to be doing is bringing news from neuroscience to the clinician. That's really my goal for the conference, and also it was and is my goal in the book. The neuroscience field has really exploded in the last decade. Largely due to technology, interestingly enough. So scanning devices like the fMRI machine allow us to see what's going on when people are inside the brain. My goal for the book and my goal for the conference is to empower clinicians to be able to help couples change more efficiently, more successfully. by knowing more about the brain and the body and what's going on in brain and body when we're in relationships.
So there's kind of this educational component.
Exactly. So that the clinician is educated, and then the clinician can then educate the couple, the clients, right? So we empower, this is to empower clinicians to then empower clients. To me, knowledge is power, and it's not just abstract knowledge, it's how does the wisdom from neurobiology translate into clinical interventions.
Okay.
So I call it neuroeducation, both for the clinician and ultimately for the couple as well.
Oh, interesting.
So I thought I would talk a little bit about love.
Okay.
It's kind of at the heart of the matter.
Let's go for it.
We all love it.
Yes, we all love love.
Right. So falling in love is easy and delicious. I remember exactly where I was when I fell in love with my husband, and Cupid's arrow struck me right in the heart. He was in graduate school, I was an undergraduate in the Boston area, and I had met him a year before. It didn't click, didn't happen. I won't go into the whole long story, but it didn't. And then a year later, I met him on the Brandeis campus, Brandeis University, and it was a snowy day in February. I remember exactly what I was wearing, the coat, the hat, the whole thing, you know. And I remember seeing him, and he was talking actually to my sister, and as he was talking about a very deep personal subject. I was struck at that moment. I just fell into his eyes. And then I went in and we had lunch together afterwards. We just decided to talk. And we fell in love, both of us, on the spot. It was in a castle, actually, which is rather romantic.
That is a
on the
little
Brandeis
romantic.
campus.
Yeah.
And we fell in love, and so that is amazing, that falling in love experience.
Definitely.
The neuroscientists have tried to track down what is falling in love, what's it all about. And what they have found, they've put madly in love people in the fMRI machine, and when they're looking at a picture of their beloved, they find out what's going on in the brain. What's going on in the brain is that the reward centers are activated. That the parts of the brain that are active when you're in love are the same parts of the brain that are active when you're addicted to cocaine.
Okay.
Okay. So, cocaine, love. So, love is a drug, as some people say.
Yeah. This is a little bit of proof of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, at that moment when I fell in love with my husband, I saw him and me, and during that period, I saw him and me in Technicolor, as we called it back then.
Interesting.
And the rest of the world was in black and white.
Huh.
Everything else sort of faded by comparison. This was so salient. This was so important to me.
Yeah.
It's so fun, right?
Yeah.
So the other part that's going on in the brain when we're in love is that the critical judgmental parts of our brain are silent. So you don't see the flaws. You wear rose-colored glasses. Love is blind, they say, right? So that's great. I love it. I love love. I love falling in love. The problem is it doesn't last. It lasts, romantic, passionate love lasts about a year to a year and a half.
Okay.
And then it turns into something a little tamer called companionate love.
All right.
And even companionate love is hard to maintain over the long haul. So the question of, here you've got falling in love, which is delicious, then you've got how do you maintain love over the long haul? And many of us are struggling with that.
Yeah.
Right? So it turns out that to maintain love over the long haul, you need to really work at it. The statistics on marital, and I use marital as a code for relationship satisfaction, right? Much of the research has been on marriage, heterosexual marriage, but we include couples who are living together and aren't married, gay and lesbian couples, etc. Marital satisfaction goes down with time. And it gets worse with stress and financial issues, and it gets worse with having children, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
well, stress.
Stress, big time stress, no sleep.
Right.
Focus elsewhere.
Right.
You're not focusing on your beloved, you're focusing on the new beloved, the child.
Right.
So it's a rather grim story, actually, if you look at the research on relationship satisfaction over time. So the moral of the story to me is we got to work at love if it's going to last. You can't just sit back and say passively, love me well and take care of me well, and that should all be flowing and easy. To have this work, we really have to work at it. The long-term challenge of nurturing love over the long haul is really challenging, and many of the cultural values don't help. Another cultural value or cultural phenomenon that doesn't help is all of our devices. Right? We're all wired, we're all attached, 24/7 sometimes.
Yeah, and in a way detached.
And therefore detached, exactly. So you'll see couples out for dinner and they're each texting other people on their smartphones, and they're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
And we've come to expect that. When you're in company, people are using their smart devices to not be very smart as far as relationship is concerned. And then what happens is we evolved as human beings, which I'll talk about shortly. We evolved for face-to-face contact. When you're texting or you're emailing, or you're tweeting, there is no face-to-face contact. There is no eye contact. So we're not really able to read the emotions of the other, which is crucial for relationship success.
Right. So in March at the conference, what are some of the things that you're going to be talking about with regard to the change in therapy?
That's a great question. I will be looking at what are the couples' cycles of reactivity, because couples get into cycles, into dances, as we say in couple therapy,
Right.
where one person's upset sets off the other person's upset. These are driven by the limbic brain, by the emotional brain, mostly the amygdala. So these have been called by Daniel Goleman the limbic tango.
All right.
I call it the Dance of Amygdalas. That's obviously a little poetic liberty that I take there. But we are looking at how the couple get caught up in what I call a vulnerability cycle, where each person's vulnerability triggers their survival strategies. And their survival strategies may upset the other person and trigger their vulnerabilities. So the couple gets into a loop. And often the loop involves a blame game. So each couple is blaming the other for what's going wrong. They also often have a linear view. Each partner has a linear view. So she might feel so I'll give you an example. I'm going to talk in my in the presentation about Eric and Lisa, a couple from my book.
Oh, okay.
So Lisa pursues, Eric withdraws. That's
Right.
sort of your typical heterosexual couple.
Right,
She's
right.
trying to get closer, he's feeling criticized, right?
Right.
And so she has a linear view that she pursues him because he withdraws. He has a linear view, he withdraws because she pursues. The truth is, this is a cycle that they have co-created together. And I try to help them be a team to look together at their cycle, trying to understand what's going on behaviorally, emotionally, cognitively for each of them. And then what's the neurobiology that's fueling all of that? I am a realistic optimist about change in therapy.
What does that mean?
So what that means is, on the one hand, we're wired for habit. We are creatures of habit. Old habits die hard. They're very hard to change. But we can change habit because we're also creatures of change and adaptation. The human being is most especially a creature of change and adaptation. So I work with clients to nurture their neuroplasticity and nurture what I call their relationship plasticity. But as I said before, in adulthood, neuroplasticity takes a lot of work. Change takes a lot of effort. And to transform a relationship, the couple has to work really hard over time. And then they have to practice the new habits over and over again, so they now will become wired into the brain as new habits. And down the road, if they get tired or sick or stressed, the old habits may come roaring back. That's called a setback. We prepare clients for that. We anticipate that may happen. They can come back if they want. The door is open if they'd like to come back to therapy. Or they can remember that this is a setback and they can go back to their new practices. So the bottom line of all of this is long-term love takes work. And that being able to take responsibility for your part in a relationship is really, really important. Repair is at the center of all this, as opposed to the phrase from a movie long ago, love means never having to say you're sorry. Actually, love means saying you're sorry a lot. There's a lot of repair that goes on in couple therapy. So I look forward to sharing these ideas at the conference and to sharing interactions with the IAMFT community.
Well, we're
And I'll see
really
you all in
looking
March.
forward to you coming and to hearing everything that you're working on. Thank you
Great.
so much for
Thank
taking
you.
the time today.